Gillman, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
You do some really interesting work on obesity prevention. That's obviously a very hot button issue. Can you think of some of advances that are giving people hope for this field? Because I think sometimes people have fatigue and they're worried that we're not doing anything. What would you tell those people?
Well, the first thing to know is that while obesity rates really skyrocketed in the 1990s and the early 2000s, we already see some of the effects of that hope, because at least in preschool children, the levels of obesity have really plateaued and in some cases gone down, especially in preschool children and some subpopulations of adults.
Do we know why that is?
We don't really know why that is. The decrease in obesity in preschool children is of great interest to me because the research I do is a lot about the prenatal and the infancy origins of obesity and chronic disease. And what we know, for example, is that birth weight, remarkably, paradoxically, has gone down in this country and many others over the past 15 years. We know that birth weight is actually related to later excess weight. And so something may be going on prenatally that we don't know about that's actually underpinning the decrease in obesity in preschoolers. We also know that there have been a number of whole of community interventions that have gone on, mostly in school age, but some in the under fives, that have really been instrumental in changing behaviors and attitudes.
So does research seem to suggest that we kind of need to attack this on two levels, sort of before kids are born and after they're born?
You know, traditionally we think about chronic disease as the amalgam of things that happen in adulthood. So we started with these risk factor studies and we learned about blood pressure and we learned about cholesterol, we learned about smoking. And over the past few decades, we've learned that the origins are not even as early as childhood, but they're even earlier than that, even before birth. And there's probably some combination of things that happen in the first 1,000 days, like from conception to age 2, as well as after that, that gives rise to obesity, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes.
Given that some of this seems genetically, if not predetermined, influenced before you're born, is there hope for older children or adults who are facing these problems?
Well, if we think about genetics, certainly genetics is a key contributor to why different people look different and act different. But the obesity epidemic cannot be explained by genetics. It happened over 30 years, and that's way too short for genetic influences. But we could invoke epigenetics. Epigenetics literally means above genetics. And these are influences of the way our genes are expressed. And these could be due to different diets, to exercise, to smoking. And these things can actually influence the development of obesity and other consequences within a generation. It's very interesting that epigenetics may be extremely important before birth, because right after conception, the major form of epigenetics, called DNA methylation, is erased throughout our genome. And the reason that we have different cells of our body, why our liver cells are different from our brain cells or different from our heart cells, that's all about DNA methylation. So you might expect that if things go a little bit awry during those early developmental periods, they might have lifelong consequences. Sometimes irreversible, but we also have many irreversible.
Do you think that this problem is something that we'll be looking back in 20 years and saying it's completely eradicated, or do you think it's something it's going to take a really long time to solve?
If we're talking about obesity throughout the population, I think it's going to take us a long time to solve. I think we've started to make some inroads, but I don't think we're going to see the decrease in obesity the way we saw the dramatic decreases, say, in smoking or heart disease. And part of the reason I say that is really a worldwide lens. Throughout the world, both in industrialized nations and in developing nations, obesity is a problem. And in those nations that are undergoing the transition, the nutrition and epidemiologic transition, you see a real burgeoning of obesity, to the point where across the world now, the effects of obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, are the leading causes of disability and mortality.
Dr. Gillman, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you very much.